inshallah, to resume my Ramadan series, The Treasure Behind the Trials. I previously spoke about the reality on the ground, right? And that reality on the ground is that the life of this world is a place of examination, and that this world was never intended to be a paradise. It was never intended to be perfect. And in fact, it was deliberately made with all of its challenges and all of its struggles and all of its voids, right? And what this actually does is set the stage to make for us available a very, very beautiful treasure. By this world not being perfect, a very, very valuable treasure is made available to us all. And that is the treasure of contribution, the treasure of positive impact, the opportunity for you and I to be an asset in the lives of other people, to be an asset in the different spaces that we actually we enter, right? And recently I had my son, may Allah preserve him and make him a long life of contribution, and I had him at a doctor's appointment. And the doctor was doing his thing. He took my son, he said, "How you doing, young fella? Welcome to this world," right? "I know it's not a perfect place, but that's why you're here. I know this world is not perfect, but that is why you are here," right? And so what he meant by that is that this imperfect world is supposed to be made more perfect. This incomplete world is supposed to be made more complete by your presence in it, right? By your contribution into this world, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, he made this world with all of its voids and its challenges, and then he placed us in it, and he invited you and I to be the piece that makes this world more perfect, right? And I was reminded of how the likes of Musa alayhi salam, he was the remedy, he was the solution in his time for the problem of Fir'aun, right? And by his contribution and by the value that he brought, he was able to liberate his people and alleviate his people from the problem of Fir'aun. Likewise, we find in the example of Dawood alayhi salam that he was the remedy for the tyrant of Goliath, right? And by his contribution, he had a slingshot and he had faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was able to rid his people of that tyranny, right? Everybody knows Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, right? He was the remedy for the Crusaders. And he was the answer to the supplication of the people of Palestine during that time, right? But each time has its people, right? We have to be the people in this time to bring forth by our contributions and the value that we're able to bring in this world, the liberation of the people of Palestine. He was for that time, and we are for this time. And the Prophet ﷺ, right? He was with the Quran, with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was the remedy, right? Until the day of judgment for all of humanity, right? Rahmatan lil alameen, a mercy to all of humanity, right? And with the Quran that he came with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described this Quran, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاء وَرَحْمَةً, that we send down with this Quran that which is a remedy, a cure, right? And also a mercy for those who believe, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has established this framework where this life is not perfect, so that we can step up and we can be people of contribution, right? And there's so many verses in our hadith that actually call us to this reality. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he invites us, let there be from amongst you a community calling to all that is good, right? The Somebody has the solution to this problem, huh? MashaAllah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, let there be from amongst you a community of people inviting to everything that is good, calling to the good contribution and urging people and commanding to that which is proper and appropriate and forbidding that which is improper and inappropriate. And these are the ones in this framework of life who will succeed, who will be successful at this test, those who are inviting to that which is good. And the Prophet ﷺ, when we look at his sunnah, when we look at the ahadith, he was calling us to be contributors more than being consumers. As Imam Muhammad, Sheikh Muhammad al-Shinawi mentioned the other day, that the upper hand, yadul ulya, khayru min al-yad al-sufla, that the upper hand, and this isn't only related to charity, but this is also about making a contribution. The upper hand, the giving hand, the contributing hand is better off than the receiving hand, right? And he said that the lowest level of faith, pay attention to this, the lowest branch, meaning there's no branches below it, and it's the easiest one to reach, is imatatul adha an tariq, the removal of something harmful from the path, right? Meaning that in order to attain just the lowest level of faith, it requires contribution from you and I, right? And what is below that? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows that. But we don't want to be the people that's leaving the harm in the path, and we don't want to be the one that's placing the harm in the path. And He says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, khayrun nas anfa'uhum linnas, that the best people are those who are most beneficial to others, those who bring value to the lives of others. The reason that you have a job, the reason that you have a role or a position is because of the value that you bring, the contribution that you bring to that space. As soon as that contribution stops, you become irrelevant in that space. The reason that we have meaningful relationships between one another is because the value that that person brings to your life, the contribution that you make to the life. The reason that our parents are irreplaceable, right, is because of the value and the contribution that they made to our lives, even since the time before we were born. And I'll close. As one of my teachers, he always used to say, "La taj'al huduraka kaghiyabika," right? Do not make your presence resemble your absence. Do not make your presence resemble your absence. Meaning that your presence should not be such that no one knows when you're here and no one knows when you're gone. No one feels your impact when you're here, right? And no one is even bothered to think when you're gone. Rather, your presence should be so profound that your absence begins to look like your presence, right? That your impact is felt. It's just like you're here, even when you are not here. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people of contribution. Make us people of the upper hand and not the lower hand. Allahumma ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakumullahu khaira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.